Hello and welcome to The Passion Show. My name is Phil and joining me as always is my co-host Kyle.
Hello.
And this week we are joined by businessman and former apprentice candidate Charles Burns.
Hi guys, how's it all going?
In today's episode, we're talking about Charles's app, Allergi, and a bunch of other businessy type things.
Yeah, going to go into sort of ideas about entrepreneurship and business and stuff like that. But we'll start off by just asking you first off, Charles, how did you get started with business and what was your first exposure to business as like a career and, your passion?
Sure. Really, I'm the archetypal entrepreneur story that everyone says that they did, but I actually did, where it first started in kind of secondary school. So there was an opportunity in regards to would get the bus there and back to, it was Manchester Grammar School at the time. It was like a 40-minute journey each way. And it was just like, it dawned on me that people are hungry. And guess what? I can go to Costco and buy some sweets and sell them and make a profit. And before long, it was like 70 to £100 a week I was clearing. And at like 12, 13 years old, like when you're not really spending money, it's pretty significant money. I somewhat wish I could go back to those days sometimes. But, much simpler.
Yeah.
It's just one plus one. Add some margin on it and all the rest of it. But I think those kind of things, like, when you're younger and like that kind of flair, it probably stems back from my family. So my grandfather founded the family jewelry company. So the store, people might know, it's 125 years old.
Oh, wow.
In central Manchester, opposite Marks and Spencer's. So it's called Arthur Kay's. It's opposite Marks and Spencer's, and it's got the black and gold shield. People will know it. You may not think you know it, but when you walk past it, like, oh, okay, I know that shop. Super iconic and really interesting. So, from around the dinner tables and whatnot, it was always discussed. My dad's now runs that business. So there was always business was discussed, much to the demise of my, like the extended family, who were like, oh, it's so boring, this conversation type thing. So I think it all came from there. And then, as I say, when I saw an opportunity, was like selling sweets or whatever. And then it went on to, I don't know if you guys are too young to remember, but Live Strong bands and other kind of silicon bands, so like Nike, the racing band. Yeah, all those, they were huge at the time. So, I would look at that and I'd be like, right, how can I actually supply other kids to sell in the school? So that's what I did. And, I remember one time walking to my like hairdresser or something, and they're like, oh, who are you on the phone? So I was outside for like 5-10 minutes. And I'm like, oh, it's on the phone to China, just like very blasé, didn't think anything of it. And now I think back, I'm like, it's crazy for like a 14-year-old kid or whatever it was at the time to just be on the phone to China, like trying to negotiate some price, some rubber bands effectively.
That's pretty mental.
Yeah, it's just like, but at the time, it's just like, it was like Alibaba, I think it was something. It just seemed logical. And then, so I built up a nice amount of money from all those things. It adds up if you're not spending it. So then when another opportunity came about, and it was for my dad's business, there was a watch company called Ice Watches. I don't know if you've heard of those guys. They were with the kind of toy watch craze. So the brand called Toy Watch, not toy watches, even though they were plasticky, pretty crappy things anyway.
Yeah.
But anyway, so a fellow that was kind of the representative of that company was like moving on, and he had all this stock, and he offered it to my father. He was like, oh, it's not really, for our store, etc. And I just saw it, and I was like, it was a few £1,000s, which was not insignificant to me at that point. And I was like, you know what? Like, yeah, I'm going to take a punt. So I just bought these 2 or 300 watches and went through selling them. And it just went from there. So any opportunity that I saw, went to university, not for very long, but whilst I was there, it was like, okay, how can I, do something interesting and entrepreneurial? It was like, oh, there's flyers for nightclubs. So I started kind of selling flyers to nightclubs, and it was anything I could kind of, get my teeth into, really.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, it sounds like you were quite successful even from a young age, like in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose so. Probably more successful than I am now to some extent, but yeah.
When you're in school, and obviously people like sell stuff like sweets and bands and stuff like that, you don't really think much of it, but I like your perspective on it, the way you were doing it to get into this world of business, sort of, maybe subconsciously, maybe not, but I like the way you're going for every sort of chance you could.
I think it's born out of that is where the passion comes from. I think I like the name of your podcast and what it stands for.
Yeah.
And I just read a book recently called Start With Why by Simon Sinek, who's like a great kind of business thought leader. And he explains that kind of the best companies start with a purpose right at the center, and that is the principle by which the company is run. So if we look at what Apple does and how they market and everything like that, what they're not saying is we have the best computers, we have the best technology, this is what we do, all the rest of it. That's more of a IBM approach, for example. What they do is they sell the culture, they sell the philosophy, they sell the lifestyle, that kind of stuff. So I think going back to what I was doing, it wasn't as much as, of course, I liked having money in my pocket. Of course, everyone does, I think, to an extent. But I think it was more that I'm actually quite enjoying this, having conversation with people, the kind of hustle of it. And things that I learned, coming back to what you're saying, that you don't realize now, was like things like competition. So all of a sudden, people were like, hold on a minute, this guy's doing well, and I'm going to copy it. And so my best buddy copied it. And that created a bit of friction, albeit there was like two different bus routes. So he kind of took that route and I took my route. But there was some crossover there. And we talk about it now. It's been a buddy of mine, best buddy for years, 20 odd years. So yeah, I think you learn a lot of lessons starting early. That's not to say, I mean, I'm just currently reading a book by Ray Kroc, who you might not have heard of, but he wasn't the founder of McDonald's, that was the McDonald's brothers, but effectively without him, there would be no McDonald's that you know today.
They made a film about it, didn't they, with Michael Keaton? Yeah.
Brilliant. It's brilliant. It's on Amazon Prime, and I urge anyone to watch it. It's very interesting.
I think it's called The Founder.
And this book's written in the 70s, right? And he's talking about the 1920s, and really, really interesting. But, I can't remember where I was going on that tangent, but he's the point I'm trying to raise is that, it's that passion and purpose. And sorry, with him, that's what I was talking about. Sorry. So yes, starting is useful, but at the same time, he was 52 when he actually started kind of with McDonald's. And I think KFC was even later. I think the guy was in the 60s. I could be incorrect there, but I think he was about that age. So it doesn't really matter what age you start. And I think people have this perception that, my route of being, very obviously entrepreneurial by a young age and selling sweets, all the rest of it, is the only route and it's the best route. And that's absolutely not the case. There's people that go, anything you do, it's very cliche to say, but anything that you do, even this right now, when I'm talking to you guys and your audience, like I'm selling, right? I'm selling my story, I'm selling myself, but actually it might not be a monetary transaction, or it might be maybe a bit of a cynical way of looking at things. When you're speaking to your partner about a new job you want to take up, or you want to go to this on holiday somewhere, you're constantly selling something and trying to persuade people.
Does this sort of like shape your ideology in life, that you're constantly like selling yourself to,
Sounds wrong.
I know, I realise what to say, but you're trying to sell like I don't know, trying to word it properly.
No, I know what you're trying to say. I know what you're trying to say. I don't look at life cynically that, everyone's out for their own gains. And in fact, yesterday, a small plug, I was on The Big Question on BBC One. Oh, cool, thank you. And the question that I was kind of brought in to talk about was, will capitalism save the planet? And the reason that's relevant here is that I don't have the view that everyone's really self-centered and self-serving. I think the best businesses of today and the future, and actually look in the past, generally aren't just created for let's make loads of money. Generally, and I think nowadays more so, people see straight through that. And there has to be that purpose, that why, that passion behind what you're doing. Not just, the money comes from as a result. Again, it's very cliche, but it's true. The money comes as a result of hard work and determination and ingenuity and all the rest of it. But at its core, really, what an entrepreneur is doing, or a business person, etc., or even anyone in the day-to-day life, in work, whatever, you're solving problems. That's how you get rewarded in society. Generally, it doesn't always work like that. So my view is, into the passion, if you have to be, for me, I've got friends that, most of my friends who I'm Manchester based, you might tell my accent, you might not, I don't know. But most of my friends from school days moved to London for the bright lights and kind of the higher salaries and all the rest of it. And what look at them now in reception of one or two, they're not following their passions, right? One guy, he might be hearing this now, but he knows who he is. But he's in an internal audit, for example. Now, I don't care how passionate you are about numbers; it's a difficult place to be passionate about, right? But I think the guys that I know that follow their passions, they might be earning a little less now in the short term, but I think longer term they'll have a lot more longevity in their career. They'll be more fulfilled. They won't need as many material things. And I think that longer term, from a financial point of view, it will actually pay off more for them. So that's like, I think for me, is the philosophy that I always go down, is that, as I say, when you're chasing money, it tends to backfire at you. When you're chasing passion and a vision and ideas, that's when exciting things happen.
Yeah, I think there's a balance to strike between doing something you're passionate about and doing something that is like financially viable. Financially viable for you. And I think the more passionate you are about something, the more willing you are to work on it in general.
Yes.
And I think that was our philosophy with the podcast, in that people want to talk about things that they're passionate about, you know what I mean?
100%.
So it's like
100%.
Still haven't earned a penny.
Well, here's the thing. So it's actually super interesting. Again, coming back to that kind of debate that I was involved with yesterday. So why I think capitalism is important is that it's all very well and good me sitting here, X person sitting here, Y person sitting there, whatever, and saying, yeah, chase your dreams. And you know, I don't subscribe to a lot of these Instagram and social media stars like Gary Vaynerchuk and a lot of the other guys who are all about, oh, you've got a passion, just quit your job and do it. It's just way too simplistic. And I think, yes, it creates great sound bites.
It's dangerous, isn't it? It's a dangerous trap to fall into.
It really is. And to be able to pursue a vision, you have to have something that's sustainable. Like, for example, with my business, I might come to that a bit more afterwards. Part of what I'd love to do is to give back in a charitable way to some of the associations that work within the food tech sector that I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't do that if I'm not earning a living. I also can't continue to do, you know, what the passion and purpose behind the business is. I can't fulfill that globally without it being a sustainable business. Now, I think, again, what you've seen very dangerously, examples like I saw the new, or the current rather, chairman of WeWork talking literally about an hour ago or so. And if you look at some of the big tech kind of stories, I won't call them successes because I think it's dangerous, of companies that have had huge valuations, that have had huge excitement around their growth and all the rest of it. You know, for example, Deliveroo, for example, Uber, for example, Airbnb, for example, WeWork, and not to throw them all in because I don't know them all ins and outs. But the issue with those companies has been, yes, they've been doing everything they can to grow the company, but actually they're not making any money. They're actually losing money hand over fist. And we're getting into this kind of world now. I think it's starting to change where, you know, people were like, actually, it doesn't matter how much I lose as long as I'm growing the business. Like that's so counterintuitive. And I think the world's now moving further towards actually, it has to be sustainable, right? It's better to have a sustainable, smaller business than something that's just going to blow up in your face at some point.
There's no point having the success if it is going to all just blow up, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're sort of transitioning slowly into talking about your app, which is Allergi, isn't it? Do you want to sort of tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Allergi, spelled Allergi. I came up with it around a year or so ago. And again, it came out of a personal issue that I had. So I'm lactose intolerant, meaning I can't really have milk and all the rest of it. I'm not allergic, thankfully, but it's not great for me.
Yeah.
And I'd just go out eating and whatnot, and I'd realised that, you know, there was no standardization. Even though later found out there's an actual legal requirement, not to get into too much depth, but there's a legal requirement to have information pertaining to allergens in dishes, those sorts of things. But actually, the way companies hold that data and what they do with it and how they display it and how they put it across to their diners and users, etc., is really, really poor.
Yeah.
You know, to give you a quick example, I was at a networking dinner literally the other day at the Ivy, which is, you know, Manchester, probably on the top end of the restaurant spectrum. And I asked the server if there's cream in a certain soup. He didn't know, which is poor to start with. Yeah. And then he goes and gets a clipboard with a laminated piece of literally paper. And I'm looking and thinking, this is the highest class, almost, maybe, depends how you define it, of restaurant in Manchester. And that's how they're managing this. Like, it's really poor. So I thought this is a better way of doing this. I looked around as you do and found that there was nothing out there. And so what I intend to do and what I'm currently in, as I had a meeting this morning with my kind of developer, is an app whereby you'd input your dietary requirements, so whether it's halal, kosher, vegan, etc., and or if you have allergy, things you're allergic to or want to avoid. And then you see a list of restaurants in your area. And then one level further, which is the main point, you see a menu that's personalized and tailored to your requirements. So it's really simple. And I think that's what, again, in terms of principles that I have, am I smart? Am I not? I don't know. That's so difficult to decide. But what I think I do well is I create very simple solutions. Because I think people get way overcomplicated with trying to come up with, really complex ideas. And actually, simple. You start with a question, and then you go down the rabbit hole, and you see, are there solutions? Is there a gap in the market for something that's better value, that's something that's cheaper, something that's encompasses more of the market and all the rest of it. That's how any business starts, right? Mm-hmm. Uber started because the guy who was already worth, I think it's Copernic, I can't remember his name, to be fair, but he was already worth a decent amount, like millions. And he basically was going to and from an event, I think the story goes, and he was like, hold on a minute, wouldn't it be great if it looked like I had a driver? So, Uber in the UK obviously has there's cars on of that caliber. They have stickers with Uber on the side. It's all the rest of it. But it started very differently, as I say, can I have a on-demand VIP chauffeur service? And that was the problem we wanted to solve. And then, it went down and down and down and turned into something very, very different. So that's what I'd always say, is that just think of every single day in your life, there'll be something that is irritating to you, that is a problem, that is, taking you too much time or whatever. And I kind of keep a note. I use Microsoft To-Do List, but there's other good options as well, but it's free. I think it's fantastic. And I log, ideas that I have, or, it could be in this conversation now, and I'm thinking, hold on a minute, that's reminding me I should probably speak to this person about this and all the rest of it. So I kind of try and download my brain as much as I can. Mm-hmm.
So would you advise other people to do that?
Yeah, very much. I think it's super important to not just rely on your memory, because at any given point in time, ideas spark from various ways. And I just find personally, I did use an app called Wunderlist, but it's actually just been was acquired rather by Microsoft, and they're now transitioning to Microsoft To-Do List. So it's a free app. There's literally no limitations. It's just brilliant. You create lists. You can have lists that you share with people. So for you guys, for your podcast, you can have a list of who, the guests that you want, or where you're up to in the process. You can put dates by things. You can add attachments, videos, photos. So, for example, if I see a really nice advertisement in a newspaper, or I see today, I was looking at an app and had a really nice walkthrough as to how the app works, I can screen grab that on my phone, record it, and then add it to a list. So when myself and my developer are looking to how does we work a nice walkthrough, I've got something to refer to straight away. Mm-hmm. So it's a really great way to kind of organize. I organize my entire life through it, to be honest with you, from a shopping list to everything. But I'm probably quite extreme. But you just start, and you'll just see how beneficial it is. But again, it's like anything. It's only worth the time you put into it, and also if you get something out of it. There's no point in doing anything for doing sake. I don't believe in that.
Yeah, I might take you up on that and start organising the podcast in that way.
Honestly, I was shown it by someone I used to work with, and they were taking notes in it. And you can also take notes in a meeting and stuff. It's funny, actually. I was talking to, again, this morning in a meeting I had, and I was like, part of me thinks that there's benefit to taking notes digitally, so using a Microsoft Surface or a MacBook or whatever. But I think sometimes it's almost a bit rude, when you're in a meeting and you're tapping away in your laptop, and you're in front of somebody, or I think it can be distracting, and an email pops in or this pops in. So sometimes, and I think in meetings, I normally tend to write notes manually, but then what I'll do is at the end of each day or the day after, I'll kind of take the key points and I'll turn them into actionable to-dos, and that kind of keeps me productive and kind of on course, I think.
In terms of Allergi, who does it help? So you said before that you were lactose intolerant. Does it help vegetarians, vegans, people with eating disorders, people like that?
Yes. Absolutely. Um, it's initially called Allergy, and then they might be subject to change at some point in time. But it worked for the initial, a bit like with the Uber scenario, where their initial kind of target was, okay, people that want VIP service. My initial thought was people that have got allergies, and then it's slowly and surely from talking to, and this is one thing I would really recommend. There's a book called The Lean Starter by Eric Ries, or Rees, I think I pronounced his name, R-I-E-S, I think it is. And he talks about this methodology, which you've probably heard before, which is about, talking to your customers as much as possible, getting feedback and iterating your process further and further. And you probably do it already, to be fair, but it doesn't hurt to kind of, just kind of really think about it and read that book. I've actually got on my LinkedIn, if you want to have a look at it, I wrote like an article roughly summarizing what it's all about. So you can have a look at it if you want, if you think it's going to be good. But my point is with allergy, it initially started with people with allergies. So that can be anything, nuts, it could be wheat, it could be all sorts of stuff. And then it's become, hold on a minute, well, this also applies to a vegan or a vegetarian or someone that's got a halal or a kosher diet. So really it's going to evolve, and what it is currently and what it will when it launches in about 5-6 weeks, you'll see just a baseline version of just being able to filter by various requirements, but it will move on much beyond that. And the idea really, the vision for me is to create a kind of a network where you've got a lot of users, a lot of restaurants, and that then becomes very valuable. Because in this particular marketplace, people want to be recommended to things. So targeted advertisements from, for example, Pizza Express have got a new vegan pizza out, or Warburton have got a new bread that's great for celiacs, for example. People that have those requirements genuinely really want to know about those kind of products coming out, because it actually helps them and helps them decide where they want to go eat, for example. But then it also, on the reverse side, really helps the restaurants out, because they can start to see, hold on a minute, we didn't realize that down the road, Cafe X is selling a specific type of bread, a specific type of dish, and they're doing really well with it. It might be worth you looking at kind of, implementing that kind of stuff. So that data on like real kind of, user activity and what people are actually eating isn't so readily available and captured really anywhere. So that's kind of the broad stroke vision for it, I suppose. But I think, again, when you start a company, you start with a simple question, you go down that rabbit hole, you kind of see and figure out if there's a need for your product. But it'll be led by the users and the restaurateurs, and things like, for example, we're thinking about, wouldn't it be great before you go to a restaurant, knowing the name of one or two people that work there, that'll be on the shift at the time you go, that'll make your experience easier. For example, maybe they're really well equipped to know about dietary requirements, so you're going to see John or Juliet or whomever in that particular restaurant. It adds that kind of real level of service and friendliness and familiarity to it. So there's tons of potential, and it's a real global opportunity. It's really cool, really interesting.
At our current time, like, there's a lot of discussion going on around like veganism and leaving meat behind and stuff like that, and other restaurants do sort of catch on to what each other's doing. I think it ties quite well into the app, that this sort of time period, the time the app's coming out as well, when a lot of places are turning towards these vegan alternatives. And I think,
because you see posters like Greg's and all that, don't you?
And everyone just keeps doing like new ones, don't they? So I think it would be like a good outlet for people who, like you said, people who don't have who have dietary requirements, or that want that, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think something that in any business, again, that you want to be abreast of is what's called megatrends, or what people call megatrends. So things that are global or maybe national, but are not going anywhere, let's put it that way. So the trend towards veganism is going nowhere but up. So last year or the year before, it was about 1% of the population. It's set to triple to about 3% of the population, which puts like 1 million people. But actually, as was discussed yesterday, one of the interesting things when you look into kind of global warming and all those sorts of things is that 15 to 18% of all emissions are caused by animal agriculture. People don't realise that. Rearing of cattle and the water associated and the feed and the grains and they have to grow and the deforestation, all the rest of it. And the staggering fact is that's more than cars, planes, trains, anything, ships, all transportation combined. So really, it's not just a matter of, there are elements to it being healthy for you. It's better than the environment. There's tons of different kind of reasons why people are moving towards that. And again, in terms of allergies, for whatever reason, and I think it's a combination of things, but also the complexity of the modern kind of food system. People are becoming more and more allergic to things, and it's becoming more and more commonplace. Like lactose intolerance was not a big thing, whereas now it's enormous. I think the food people with food allergies is set to top 500 million or 500 million people, and that's just allergies. That's not including people, as say, that I call it a nuanced diet, where some people don't want to be a vegan necessarily, but they want to cut down their meat. So they want to know if they go into a restaurant, what options are there that aren't meat options, right? Yeah. So there's so many different kind of trends pointing towards what I'm doing, and it's really key when it comes to that passion bit that there's times, and people don't talk about this, and I do, and I think it's important, but there's times in your entrepreneurial path where it's super frustrating, where you think you're on something, and then for me, one of the biggest issues was trying to find the right developer. And I went through tons of different people and agencies and overseas and you name it, different options. And it took months. I mean, we're talking 3, 4, 5 months. It was ridiculous and it was painful. But if you don't have that passion to drive it, you're just going to get to a wall or maybe a few walls, and you're going to go, it's just not, someone else can do it, not for me. Yeah. So it's really important.
So you said before that it hasn't launched yet, but it's about to launch in like 5 weeks. So what devices is it going to be available on?
So it'll be both iOS and Android. Okay. And yeah, I think initially it'll be quite simplistic in its kind of look and feel, but it'll do the job, right, which is the most important thing. And then with the use of feedback from diners and from restaurateurs alike, and from all other stakeholders, we'll kind of iterate it and make it better and make improvements and all the rest of it. And I think going back to what I said before about the frustrations, one of the things that I think is really important and not talked about enough is that when you've got a deficiency in one area, so for me, it's the coding, the technology piece, that's just not my bag. I'm not, I understand it at a high level, but in terms of learning to code, the rest of it, I think for me, you're either that way inclined, like you're either got a scientific mind or a mathematical mind, or you're more, better at other things. And you should always, as much as you can, focus on the things that you're great at, make them to super strengths, rather than what I guess people are told that, make your weaknesses better, all the rest of it. I don't say ignore them at all, but I think if you're super strong at, being an orator, speaking in public, or super strong at networking and making relationships, try and put yourself in a job, whether it's in a company, when you can be an entrepreneur, for example, or if it's your own company, where you are pursuing as much as possible the strengths that lie within you. So for me, that is, reaching out to people, it's making connections and all the rest of it. So what I did whilst I was, trying to find this developer, I wasn't perturbed by that fact. I knew it would happen at some point. There were days, of course, and weeks where I was like, this is ridiculous. And, of course you think about, is it worth it? It's human nature. Of course you do. But what I did in the background, which has stood me in good stead, is I spoke to, I reckon I've got a stat, I think it's about 1,000 people. And again, I'm very kind of particular with taking logging things. So I've got like a spreadsheet with everyone that I've spoken to, when I spoke to them, how I spoke to them, what medium, with LinkedIn, if it was a phone call or whatever. And I've kind of categorized them into various things. So for example, when it comes to marketing the app, I'm really, really well placed with editors of like BBC Good Food magazine, or a vegan magazine, or a blog, or whatever it might be, to have those conversations. I've already started the conversation, the dialogue really, really early, before I had very much. And I think, really, really important for an entrepreneur is to create a pitch deck. And it's not difficult. I mean, my pitch deck, I'm very against just putting numbers in for numbers' sake in terms of, here's what we think we'll do in the month one, and here's, based upon nothing, right?
Yeah.
For me, I think it's pointless. I think don't put that, like, some people will argue differently, of course they will. I think if you don't have concrete, real evidence as to why those numbers are there, don't put them in. So for me, and what I did from I guess looking back at it, I didn't realize at the time, I sent my first pitch deck out like to anyone and his dog. So I used LinkedIn, and didn't use premium. I just used the normal account, and it was a strength of mine because from the Apprentice I was kind of known to a degree, and I had thousands. I think I've got 11,500 connections, and that's not trying to brag or anything, but it helps. What people don't realize on LinkedIn is that if you're a senior person and you see that someone's got 20 connections mutual, you're far more likely to click that connect button than if you have no connections at all. In fact, LinkedIn makes it hard for you to find those people anyway. So for me, again, like with a network, you never know how somebody can be of assistance or how you can be of assistance to someone else. And we're pre-programmed to have determined views as to what somebody likes. So, for example, yesterday there was a bishop, I think the Bishop of Manchester was on the panel, and you thinking, he's there for the religious debate, and what value will he have for the capitalism or the more kind of the economic debate. And it turns out he's the chairman of a large investment company, that he was with the board of HSBC last week, and the week before the board of BP. And like, you know what I mean? And I have to stop myself. I'm a human as everyone, and go, hold on a minute. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And you go, hold on. And you go, hold on a minute. Like, I've just prejudged that person because it's a clergyman that, he's going to be, doing his prayers, doing his, lectures and whatever you want, sermons rather. And what, not how can, again, I don't want to sound cynical and say, how can he be of use to me? That's not really the right terminology, but, you just don't, as I say, you've got to be really kind of careful and notice when you are in your own mind kind of just prejudging situations.
Yeah, I get that. And what you were saying before about LinkedIn, like I fell in love with LinkedIn recently. Like I've become a bit obsessed. Like it is amazing.
Unbelievable.
Download it.
Unbelievable. Yeah, it amazed me. I went to a startup weekend. So if you don't know what that is, have a look out for them. The last one wasn't. I was just fortunate. I looked at Eventbrite at the time, and there was one that weekend. But normally, I think it's not been in Manchester for a couple of years. So I was fortunate. Maybe you have to kind of go somewhere else for the weekend to kind of experience it. And effectively, the idea is you pitch an idea. It might be something you're working on, like I've done with Allergi. It might be something just off the bat, an idea, whatever. And then eventually, teams form out of 30, 40 people. And the idea is you're supposed to have like different skill sets and come up with something, maybe a prototype or something by the end of the week, and you pitch it back and all the rest of it. And I was quite surprised by kind of some of the students there that didn't have LinkedIn. And it's, and some of the younger people, I've had it for years. I mean, I said before the Apprentice and all that sort of stuff, I was still kind of very prolific in kind of networking, like, small things. Like if I'm watching television, I see, it's the news, and I see someone that's being interviewed that's interesting, I'll just like shoot the message on LinkedIn. I just saw you on. If you make it really personal and relevant, not just generic, and you say, I just saw you on, I'll give you an example. I was in Dubai recently, and there was a hotelier on like BBC World News talking about sustainability something. And I thought, maybe I'll just reach out and say, I've just seen you on this show. Like, he's pretty senior, to be fair. Here's what I'm doing with Allergi. Like, might be worth a conversation. And there was a straight conversation from that because, he's not used to, or people aren't used to receiving real personalized, like, tell the person how you care about them, or say I was reading your book, and like, anything you might read or come across and you think that person's interesting, you'd be amazed. I think it's Richard Branson says that, to get in touch with an A-list or B-list is quite hard, but anyone below that, like, you'd be surprised how easy it is to kind of really, with today's technology, it's one of the benefits of technology and social media, how easy it really is to get in touch with some super senior people that you wouldn't think you could speak with.
We've only recently found out, like literally in like the past like 2 weeks. This is how we managed to get you on the podcast.
That was, but I appreciate that. It's Yeah, it's surprisingly more. If you do a little bit of research and you understand again what that person stands for or what the strengths are. I mean, not to divulge too much, but I've got conversations right now with C-suites like CEOs, COOs, CTOs, all these different whatevers, chiefs of companies, basically, real high up people. When I say the biggest companies, I'm talking Microsoft, I'm talking IBM, I'm talking Costa Coffee, and all different areas.
Yeah.
And the reason I've got those conversations going is because I'm very, very prescriptive as to what I want. So not just saying, sometimes it's very simple. I just saw you on TV, really interesting, it'd be cool to connect, whatever. Another tip that I have on that vein is, you might see an interesting conference somewhere, but you can't attend it, or it's expensive, or whatever. Have a look at the speaker list, and then literally find them on LinkedIn. It's super easy. So another top tip I'd give is don't search on LinkedIn, search on Google, and just put the word LinkedIn afterwards. It's far more powerful. LinkedIn starts to, and I've known it from experience, it starts to kind of stop you searching people because, like, oh, you're a super user.
It wants you to pay.
You don't need to pay. There's a simple way around that. Just literally Google the person's name, the company, and LinkedIn, and it comes straight up with them. Often you with the word LinkedIn, and you go straight to their profile and done. And you bypass all the kind of LinkedIn like premium stuff. It's useful, brilliant. Premium, I've got to say, but you can bypass it.
It's expensive though. I think I saw it was like £400 a year or something.
So I currently paid for the recruiter version, but the reason for that was because I needed a certain skill set within the app development piece, and in Manchester, that's how I wanted to do it, someone local. So I found 160 people that I've now got on my books for future reference, and one of which was the guy that is now working on time to develop the app. I didn't even think about it, but actually that's probably one of the first things to try and do. For £100, you can do it cheaper. There's some cheaper options, and you can cancel after a month. But if you think about it, £100 to find the right person for an idea that could be worth X, Y, Z, it's quite minimal, really. And it's a whole month, remember, right? So it's not just that. Then you can think about, okay, my allergy business, which people in the restaurant scene do I want to connect with, or there's also, you can basically use search parameters. So I'd say if you know the person you want to speak to, or the sort of company, Google the person, find out who they are, and then just, as I say, do a Google search, put LinkedIn after it. It's very simple. Okay. But where the premium works is where you don't know that you're looking for a type of person and the type of skill set who works in a certain company, or it's more specific. I think it's not great, I'll be honest, but it's helped me, so I can't complain too much.
I've got a question. You were on The Apprentice.
Yes.
How did that happen? What was it like? Yeah. And what did you gain from it?
Okay, so how it happened, I went into my office at the time, like super early. I don't know why. I think there was a process on the computer that was taking forever. So I flick up my phone. I'm just scrolling through Facebook, and there was like an ad there, sponsored ad saying last day to apply or something. So I thought, I'd always fancied myself. Let's say from a young age, I've always gone, as I think almost everybody does, those people on that show are so stupid. This is the easiest thing. Like, come on, how hard can this be, type thing. And that's the premise I think most people think when they watch Dragon's Den or The Apprentice or anything else. So yeah, I applied, and there was no, yes, I thought about it, but there was no like, oh, I've got a plan, I've got a business plan that I want to action, or I really want on the show. It wasn't really like that. It was by chance, really. So I applied, and at that point, it was really simple, like 5 very simple questions. Something like, what makes you your marks out for everybody else? Why do you want to be a partner with Lodge, or why would you be a good partner? Something like that, very generic questions. So I answered them, thought nothing of it. A week later, it's like, oh, you got through to the next process. I went to London for some interviews, which were kind of really hellish, a full day of like interviews, and there's different stages, and they kind of, remove people. The first stage is something like a bit like you'd imagine X Factor auditions are, where you have 30 seconds in a lineup to kind of pitch your idea to the producers. And they go, number 1, 3, and 7 stay in the room, and you're like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And you're trying to figure it out. And then you go to a different floor. It's like a building in London with tons of floors. and you get another process, and then by the end of the day, if you got through the whole thing, you end up filming from the camera. And what's interesting is that filming there is, when you see the interview before someone goes on the show, so so that's done right. This context you have to understand. That's done right at the end of the day. That's probably 6-7 hours long if you make it to that point. You've not had much food or anything. They hold you in pens on purpose where you can't talk and can't do anything like that.
I bet they do that on purpose because they try and get you to say crazy things.
Yeah, all sorts of different reasons, and also to prepare for what the show's like as well, because it's very. I'll tell you about it in a second. But it's a very difficult process. Obviously, not what you think it is on TV. And so it just went like that, and then the next thing I know is like, oh, you've made it to the final, the long list of 20 or 25, and then before you know it, it's like, oh, we'd love for you to be on the show. So it was just like one thing after another. It wasn't like as I say, I had a strategy. I've got to on The Apprentice for exposure, for this, for that, the other. Some people do that. I think it's quite obvious, actually. I think Lewis Ellis from this year, who I was actually with the other week, put it very well. I saw him tweet a few weeks ago or something, and he said, you can tell who went on The Apprentice for, he said the right reasons, but I wouldn't say it's the right reason, but for business reasons based upon what they do afterwards.
Katie Hopkins.
What's that? Sorry. Yeah, I think it's telling. You see what the past will go down. Nothing's right or wrong. Obviously, It's everyone else's choice, but they put people on there without a doubt that are just there to cause controversy or because they're characters, and they put people on there because they've got a good business plan. And they kind of mesh those things together to create entertainment. Because at the end of the day, it's pretty much, I think, behind Strictly, it's probably the BBC's biggest program in terms of audiences. I think it's something like Karen Brady was saying. Well, it's cumulative. It must be, I suppose. They have like 30 million views this year. I think on the final of the show that I was on, it was something like 7 million watched it. And if you think about that number, right, it's not just a big number. That's 1 in 10 people in the whole of the UK. So, like, when I was going out and about, this is a really weird thing. The first time when it was shown on the Wednesday, and I went out on the Saturday night at the time with my partner and friends, it was like one after another people recognise you. It was like beyond. I thought it was Justin Bieber for the night. It was the most bizarre experience, coming from obscurity to all of a sudden people want a picture. They ask you the same 3 questions and then they go about their business. Really bizarre, and has actually really interesting impacts of fame and stuff that you don't expect. Mm-hmm. I just didn't think about that. I didn't go into it for that reason. I didn't. You film it in the May-June, and then it doesn't go on TV until the October, I think it is. So like you just don't think about that. And for me, the first episode, I was kind of really central. I was painted as the villain. So, I was looking at Twitter, which is a terrible idea.
Oh, yeah, don't do that.
It's my least favorite social media. I think it's just full of bile and negativity generally. I understand people use it for news and stuff, but I personally see a lot of negative there. And yeah, it said, I remember it popped up, it says, you're trending and all the rest of it, and you get a lot of kind of attention. Do you want to filter the messages? And I should have said yes. But I didn't. And so I was getting, this guy's fat, he's ugly, he doesn't know what he's doing, and this and that. And you think it doesn't affect you, right, until it happens in real, it snowballs. And I remember that evening, because my family had come around to watch the show and all the rest of it. I barely watched the show. Remember, what I'm seeing on the show is the first time I've seen the show. And if people don't realize this as well, but physically, there are 4 teams in each episode, right? So you've got your, obviously, Team A, Team B, but then they split up into Team, A1 and A2 and Team B1 and B2. And you genuinely haven't got a clue to a large extent what the other half of the team is doing. They make it that way on purpose. So that's why calamitous mistakes happen all the time, because the amount of communication you're allowed is very, very restricted.
And they match 8 days down into an hour program in terms of the 4 teams having 2 days each. Yes,
exactly. So you're seeing a very highly edited version of what was. Normally, it's like 2 days a task and 1 day boardroom, roughly. So that's that. But I'd say when I'm watching it firsthand, I don't really, apart from what I've been told and what either the fellow contestants candidates tell me that evening when we're over dinner or something, which you're not really supposed to talk about, but you kind of do. And then in the boardroom the next day, you don't really know what of course, the other team looks like you haven't got a clue, isn't the opposite team? But even the other half of your team, you don't really know what they've been doing. So when you're watching the show, really, I only know what to expect for 25% of the show. But actually, remove that back because it's highly edited as to what I'm doing. So I'm watching it like you are. I really don't know what's going to happen. I know he's going to go, obviously, and why, but I don't really know the ins and outs of it. So I remember watching that first time. And my brain was flooded with all this Twitter bile and nonsense. And that night, I could not sleep. My brain, it was like, I can't explain to you. It's like an overload of just everything. You're like, what? I don't get it. Like, you can't compute that kind of instant shot into the public limelight for no reason.
Sounds really overwhelming.
Yeah, it is. And not to dwell on this side of it, but, mental health, I know it's kind of buzzword and whatever, but, I've gone through the mill properly with that. And it has a real detrimental effect. I mean, a lot of the people that go on that show end up either breaking up marriages or relationships and all the rest of it, and it's very, very common because you just struggle with it. I mean, for one, when you're actually on the show, you get one phone call a week normally. Unless you've got kids, you get a bit more, but you get one phone call a week in general, which lasts about 10 minutes long, and it's also awkward because you can't talk about what you're doing. You also have a producer in the room when you're having that phone call. So yeah, it's just a very odd scenario. And you come off it and you got that lull period of not knowing what to do. And then you get this kind of instant kind of fame, quote unquote, or recognizability, whatever you want to call it. And then again, you're like, I don't quite know what to do with this. And I think, again, the smarter people like Camilla Ainsworth, I have to commend her for this, have a product. If it's a product, it's easier, I think, raring to go. So off the back of it, you can kind of launch that product and you've got that great public exposure that you just couldn't really pay for. Definitely. So she's used it really, really well. But I think a lot of people, and I put myself in this boat, at the time didn't take the opportunity that presented itself. And I think sometimes as well, the way the program is for entertainment purposes, you're kind of vilified. Or you are caricatured and you become an entertainment piece. What's that? Sorry,
it's to create a narrative for the show, isn't it? Like that's what they're doing, but they have to unfortunately like throw some people under the bus
at the expense of people. So and you don't really mind that when you're watching TV, but then when it's you're like, hold on a minute, this isn't really fair, but it is what it is. You sign up for it. So so I guess it doesn't lead itself, I don't think, immediately, even the first few months afterwards, to any meaningful conversations. I think if you get to the final 5 where you're being interviewed and your business plan is exposed and discussed, some people, like I know Michaela from my series got a decent amount of investment, as did Harrison, because people go, oh, that's a cool idea. Yeah, I like the guy, I like the girl, I'll invest. So I think at that point it does. But if you're a little bit before, like I was, where your business plan's not really being discussed, you get tons of thousands of connections on LinkedIn. It was beyond. I actually had to pay someone quite literally to click accept because it was getting that bloody annoying for a while, which sounds really kind of I don't know, elitist to an extent, but it genuinely, if you saw how it was, you couldn't keep on top of it, and it was really irritating to someone like me. I hate that kind of thing, But anyway, so yeah, initially no, I didn't see much, but then and I think again, I think this is what I found and other people found, that you kind of expect things to happen. It's a very stupid attitude. And I've learned a lot from that. You kind of think, oh, well, I'm on TV, like I've got great exposure here. Like someone's gonna pick up the phone to me and like invest in my company. It's like, that's not the way the world works. It happens occasionally, right? But that's not the way the world works. You've got to go and chase after opportunities and all the rest of it. So that was kind of a big learning, and something that if I had my time again, I'd be more, I'd pursue things further, I think. I'd say.
Yeah, like capitalise on the opportunity more.
I think it's just a very hard position to be in, and I see this year. So I'm at Lewis the other day, and it's just difficult because you've got so much going on, and you might actually be in a job because you're running that alongside your business, and you've got people asking for photos all the time, and you get advice to do a talk for £500, £1,000 here and there, and that's really great, and you just, I think you kind of can get lost in it. But I think someone like Camilla, as I say, just from what I know, she uses social media very, very well, very effectively. She's got a great brand that works. And she, as I say, used that kind of everything that she had, I think, from people that I've seen over the years, to the best degree, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was interesting what you were saying before about the idea of mental health behind the show as well, that you did talk about it, because there's been a bit of a discourse around that recently with, like, I know it's a bit different, but like Jeremy Kyle got taken off the air, didn't it? And there's a lot of discussions about the Love Island contestants and how much hate they got on Twitter. So I think I think it is really good and commendable that you talked about like your experience with it and stuff.
I mean, I'll be deadly honest with you. I had to go into like mental health hospital for 6 weeks, not straight afterwards, but a period of time afterwards. And that's a very like bizarre experience that I never expected to have to go through. But you know, whether it was an underlying issue that the show kind of extrapolated, probably was. But I was married at the time. Then I got divorced, not just through the show. I'm not getting it wrong, but it had a significant impact on it. Without trying to sound too dramatic, my life came crumbling down. You know, I went through very severe financial difficulties and all sorts of stuff. And what you notice, and my kind of learning from that experience is when you get this kind of instant fame, and I can understand now from, like, you know, child actors in Hollywood, when they, you know, go off the rails or the rest of it. What happens to you is you get to a position where, you know, everywhere you're going, people are recognizing you and shaking your hand and all the rest of it and everything else. And it becomes very, very lonely. So it sounds great. I mean, for example, this morning I saw Gethin Jones, the presenter, in Manchester, just having a coffee. And I thought, do I go and say hello? Do I not? And I'm like, I kind of gave him that little nod, you do, is that whatever. But it's like, I know what it feels like. It's nice, but it's also super annoying. Yeah. It's not. I was always trying to be very, very generous with my time, because I think, you know, if it was the other way around, I'd like the person to be a nice person, right? I think that's the way to be. But there does become a time where it's like you're trying to have a meal with your wife, or you're trying to have a drink with friends or whatever, and it's constant. I remember one time I went to London, and I say there's friends of mine that moved down there, hadn't seen me whilst I was on the show. And it was a few weeks in, and London's far denser in terms of Apprentice fans, as I would find out. So I walked into this kind of like, I don't know what you'd really call it. I just call it a bar for argument's sake, but like outdoor bar. And I'm sat down, and no joke, there were people queuing to have photos, like deep queues. And I'm like, the guys are loving it, right? Because they haven't seen it before. And I'm like, this is my buddy's birthday. I've come down for, like, I've completely taken over the show, and I'm not meant to. Yeah. And everyone's asking for photos and this and that, and it becomes super awkward and super annoying. You kind of like, I don't want to be rude, but like, I feel bad on the person whose birthday it is, and I can only imagine what it's like when you're genuinely, you know, A-list Justin Bieber, all those sort of characters, and how hard it must be. And you have to end up paying for ultimate luxury experiences to get you out of that kind of world. Yeah. It's hard. I as I say, I'm not trying to equate myself to Justin Bieber. Don't get that kind of wrong.
No, not at all.
By any stretch. But as I say, I had a little taste of it. And again, the other thing you would find is, to combat that loneliness, what you end up doing is you spend more money on things, whether it's clothes, whether it's, well, that's something for me anyway, or eating out, those kind of things. And you become friendly with, you know, waiters and this kind of thing, and you think they're your friends, but really, actually, you're just tipping them, and they are nice to you. But there's the role there that they're fulfilling.
Yeah, and then superficial.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden people start coming into your life that like are bosom pals with you, and again they call themselves one of that entrepreneurs, and they're really probably not. But and again, who's to say that? But you know, all these sorts of people and girls and guys and all different sorts of people, and it creates this vacuum where people come into your life where they think either you've got a lot of money, or they think you're famous, so you can provide access to various things, whether it's going to clubs and all the rest of it and stuff. I mean, one funny story, right? So I remember one time lining up for a club. I can't remember which one it was in town. And these people were like, "Oh, you're famous. You should just jump the queue." I'm like, there's absolutely no way ever that I would go and say, or not say, but actually it's just not right in my opinion. So I didn't do that. And on another occasion, it's not a claim to fame, but it's a great story I love. There's a girl that comes out like Rev to Cuba, let's say, I don't know, it was something like that. And she's like, she's like speaking to her friends that Ryan Giggs was in there, but he wouldn't have a photo with her and all the rest of it. And she spots me, right? she takes a photo, she takes a selfie with me, and then she texts, I saw her on her phone, she was showing me, she texts her dad saying, she was talking about the whole Ryan Giggs thing, whatever. And she texts him saying, F Ryan Giggs, I just met Charles from The Apprentice. And I thought, well, as a United fan, that is just the creme de la creme, right?
That's a nice little story.
Funny. I say funny things happen. I say whether, but from the kind of more serious mental health side, I think it's important. And again, the thing that happened to me was, again, because I've mentioned it before, because all my kind of childhood friends had moved to London, or one of them that I mentioned earlier, the kind of that competitor of mine moved to Miami. There weren't kind of those kind of lifelong rooted friends. And I think it's really important. I was listening to, I forgot his name, escapes me now, but the guy who founded Huel, the like protein kind of nutritious shakes, and they're doing very, very well. Not James Hearn, so Julian Hearn, I think his name is.
Okay. And
he was saying that he still is on the same estate. He's albeit a bigger house, but he's got the same friends. He has the same, circle, the rest of it. And I think it is a very British thing to kind of go, I've made money now. Like, I'm going to have big gates outside my house. I'm going to drive my Range Rover, and I'm only speaking to other people that have a Range Rover or are my level or above type scenario. And I think you can get really easily caught up in that. Forget, again, it's cliche, but not forget where you came from. That's not what I'm trying to get to. It's forget your roots and kind of how important family are in this, and how important your original friends are who were there because they just like you as a guy, not because they've got any other ulterior motive, shall we say.
Yeah, like a support structure is important, especially when you're going off on such big ventures, you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And when I, as I say, at that particular moment in my life after The Apprentice, there was just a perfect, I call it like the perfect storm when I look back at it, where, I had a lot of money at the time because of what I was doing, and I had no one around me. I'd kind of ostracized my family for various reasons, so I didn't have them around me. I was going through a kind of messy breakup with my ex-wife. I was living in town alone. So guess what you're going to do? You're going to start going to restaurants for every meal because I couldn't bother cooking. And you're going to start meeting people that's all they do as well, right? And they might have made it, they might have not made it. I don't know. It's kind of irrelevant. But there's certain characters that come along the way and they think, because he's the guy. When I used to go, there's a restaurant in Manchester called 20 Stories. I used to go there 3 times a day, not even kidding. I knew every member of staff. I knew everything about the place, more than the manager probably.
Yeah.
And the reason being was because, again, it's just the way things work. I was working in a WeWork, which was in Spinningfields, and that restaurant opened on the top floor. And all sorts of things happened. I mean, one thing that did happen after The Apprentice, I got £250,000 investment from someone else for a similar business idea. And just there were so many things that kind of came together at a certain point that led me to the levels of insanity that you just a different character, put it that way. And it's really hard to, when you've not got that support mechanism around, and they're not close, it's hard because they could see the signs earlier on, right? Yeah. Whereas when I'm only talking to people on my terms or ad hoc, they're not seeing so much, or I would maybe be, I was very, very particularly vocal on Instagram, like oversharing, which is a problem in itself.
Yeah.
And people were like, look, listen, we can see something's wrong, and I wouldn't say they handle it so well, honestly, if I'm going kind of really into detail here. And I think it's important when you think someone is struggling or whatever, you've got to be very delicate as to how you handle that. Yeah. If you know someone that is or isn't, whatever. But that's why friendships really are so crucial, because this journey of entrepreneurship or life, forget entrepreneurship, is full of kind of peaks and troughs, ups and downs, and no more so than if you're an entrepreneur, because I think one thing mental health wise people really want to have a look at, make sense of, is what's called the emotional cycle of change. And if you Google it, you'll see it's a really simple, nice, easy to understand kind of graph as to how people and how your mindset changes. So to give an idea, if you start a new job, a few weeks before that job, when you get the offer and it's great and all the rest of it, you're buzzing, you have, what's called uninformed optimism.
Like
You don't really, you're happy.
Like the honeymoon period, kind of.
Correct. But it's uninformed because it's not even the honeymoon period, because you don't even know what you're going into, right? You've signed a contract, you think the company's cool or great or whatever, or they're paid well or whatever, but you don't really know day to day what you're going to be doing, even if it's the same kind of job in the same kind of company, right? Vastly different.
Yeah.
And then you go in first day, right? And you go, oh my days, I haven't got a clue what's going on, the systems, I don't know the people to speak to, I can't link into my computer, all these small things. And they create a crescendo where you're like, oh man, did I make the right decision? And this. And, you start to have this kind of pessimistic view of the rest of it. Yeah. And eventually you come around and you realize, actually, I can do this job. And slowly but surely you go back up that kind of curve. And I think when you're an entrepreneur and certain people's mentalities, you can, that period of time can be a year, it can be an hour, it can be a week, it can be a month. And I think you've got to be just really I think that model is really important. If you can be aware of that there's always no peaks and troughs with everything. And it's about what one of my old mentors said is find your control zone. So if you're going too high in respects of, you're giving too much energy, you're working 20 odd hours a day, I'm very against that kind of mentality. Yeah. I think, again, going back to the Gary Vaynerchuk thing and a lot of people on social media, it's all about hustle hard and work hard and outwork everyone. It's like, yeah, you can do that. I'm sure you'll be successful, but what have you left behind? You've got no friends, you've got money, but no one wants to hang around you, or you haven't got money and you've just wasted a load of time or whatever. Work smart. Think about how you can use your time productively. Look after yourself. Exercise, spend time with family, do things. I struggle with this, but do things. I say one thing that I've worked on at the moment is, it sounds really simple, and I've used that Microsoft to-do list again. There's a recurring theme here, and I've got Q1 goals, right? So people set goals that in their head. Oh, I want to lose weight, or I want to go to a holiday somewhere, or whatever. One of the issues is that you've heard, I'm sure, through your studies and everything, SMART objective, right? Mm-hmm. But it's really, it works, right? In the day, if you put a date, and I think a quarter is enough time. I think a year is way too long a period of time to kind of go, here's what I'll do in the next year. So I've gone 12 weeks, which is enough time. I want to lose 10 kilograms. I want to get a prototype of Allergi in the marketplace, and I want to read 5 books. And then what I do then is subconsciously, now it's become part of my kind of life. Every decision that I'm making, I'm like, does it fit into any of those 3 things? I'm not that regimented, right? There's still times when you do whatever you do. You go to the cinema with friends, of course. But, I think to myself, rather than scrolling through social media for half an hour at night or all the rest of it, I still do it occasionally, of course, like the next guy or girl. But I'll be like, actually, I could just read a book and that could be more interesting. And when you commit to those sort of things, and when you actually, yesterday, I thought, after that TV appearance, I'm kind of tired, but it's a Sunday, what am I going to do? I'll just go to the gym for an hour. And do you know what I mean? I force myself to go, and you always obviously feel good from doing those things.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think it's a really good way to put things in focus, is to have, I think 3 is plenty. I'd suggest 3 goals for kind of a 12-week period, and, just kind of decisions that you make, not every decision, but kind of run by. There's a very good book called Principles by Ray Dalio, who's worth $20 odd billion. He's like the Steve Jobs of investing, basically. And he talks about principles of life, of work, all the rest of it. And the simple fact of the matter is if you've got rules and kind of things you abide by, and I think kind of quarterly goals are a simple one, then you can kind of make your life work better, maybe. I guess is a better way of putting it. But for example, I never would have thought that I'd try a vegetarian diet, but one, because of what I'm doing with Allergi and my increased knowledge of all the rest of it. I talked about veganism, etc. before, but also because of my goal for losing weight. I'm like, you know what, let's try this out. So I'll do most of the week. Say again, sorry.
Yeah, it all ties in together. So
I'll do most of the week because it fits in that. And then I'm not saying every decision, but if you're looking at that chocolate bar, do I have it? I'm not saying I don't occasionally do that. Of course, everyone does, and you're right to do that. There's nothing wrong with that, in moderation, of course. But you can kind of then think, well, you're weighing the 2 things up. Is this really fitting in with me trying to lose 10 kilograms right now, or is it? Have I had too much? Do you know what I mean? Those kind of things. And I think it makes life a lot easier when you've got kind of clear objectives. I think what I find with people come back to you, the purpose of your podcast, the whole passion thing, where people lack passion, I think passion for me and where mental health and all these things come intertwined is all about purpose, right? Mm-hmm. You guys have got a purpose with this podcast, right? To interview, I'm not going to use myself as this, but interesting people or whomever to get advice for yourselves, and also probably to push that across to your listeners. And I'm sure you've got other things you want to do as well with it, etc. But you've got a real purpose behind what you're doing, and clearly cliched passion behind it as well.
Thank you.
No, of course you do, because when those two things, like just the name of the podcast, I'm like, yeah, that resonates with me. Like, I didn't even know what the podcast was. I'll be honest, I had no idea. I thought passion. Yeah, I think that's interesting. And I like the sound of my own voice, so why not? So yeah, for me, I mean, I see people, whether it's family members, friends, or people outside that are, you know, I hate the word like depressed, but let's say just aren't happy or aren't content or all the rest of it. And normally, and I'm not saying I'm a psychologist and like that, but I've got a pretty good record, or bad, depending on how you look at it, on mental health and, you know, all the rest of it, and diagnosis and meeting all different people. And from what I understand mental health to be, and forget the labels of bipolar and all these different things for a moment, a lot of it comes down to say, if you've got a purpose and if you've got passion and those two things meet together, and you do it sustainably and sensibly and all those other things that we talked about, I think you can combat a lot of things. And I think one of the problems in society and why mental health's on the increase and why people are feeling more isolated and lonely and all the rest of it is because we're flicking through social media at all these kind of, you know, everyone does it. You go on holiday for 2 weeks, you post 1 or 2 photos, right? It's an edited version. You might have had the worst holiday ever and you argue with your partner, all the rest of it. But you ain't going to tell the world that, right? Well, most people don't anyway. Or you say, you go back to your kind of these idolized, and I'd say I hate the fact they're idolized people like Gary Vaynerchuk or whatever. And people, don't get me wrong, people do get sense out of it and people are motivated by it, and that's admirable. But I think the general message of what they spurt and the way they do it, for me, is far too aggressive and far too confrontational almost.
I completely agree.
It's almost like, I know the way, you guys don't know what you're doing. Here's what you got to do. It's like, come on, like, that's not the way you know, if I was just on my parapet here telling everyone that, guys, what you got to do, you got to sell sweets at 30 and you got to do, and if you don't do that, you're a failure. Like, that's no good to anyone. It's not true either. The real kind of successful people don't talk like that. And he's become successful. He's been successful in his own right. But his thing now, from, again, outside looking in, is all about how can I, you know, be a big star on social media. And yes, I understand the message. He'll probably say, yeah, I'm motivating people, all the rest of it. And I get that. And then, you know, you've got Pardone is the other kind of one in that kind of category. And I don't know if you ever listened to his audiobook, but the rhetoric and the way he speaks, like, it's like, oh, you're a bum, just work 10 times harder. Like, you're not working 10 times harder. Like, oh, you're not good enough. Like, oh, you're a millionaire, be a billionaire. You're not good enough. It's like, come on, man. Like, that's not all life's about.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So I think people have got to be careful. And as I say, you know, just to have purpose. I guess it's all about the passion and the why and why you're getting out of bed in the morning. If all that is just to, just is not the right word, but it's just to kind of use the word again, is to earn money to pay for things, all the rest of it, you're probably going to be unfulfilled at some point in time. You might not be. I mean, I used to think that if you're not an entrepreneur, you're crazy. Like, why would you work for someone? Do you know what I mean? I used to have that kind of mentality, which is wrong, because everybody is wired differently and everybody has different wants and needs. And, you know, if my ex-wife, it was all about, she wanted a kid, that was her, like, that was everything. And to me, I was like, I don't get it. Like, how can that just be? But fair enough. That's each to their own, and we shouldn't judge that and kind of go, oh, because you don't fit into my category and my way of thinking, you're wrong, right? There's no right or wrong. Yeah, as I say, kind of focus on what you're passionate about. Focus on what provides purpose and meaning to you, and that everybody is individual and has different requirements. And, you know, learn from other people, absolutely. But at the end of the day, it comes down to you as an individual. I always say that if you read, a Richard Branson autobiography or an Alan Sugar autobiography or whatever, you could try and implement every single thing they did now, and you wouldn't have the same results. I'm not saying you wouldn't be successful or might be more successful. I don't know. But you certainly wouldn't have the same results because it's all about timing. It's all about
where you are, who you know.
Absolutely. There's so many things that go into it. And, I think the world now, again, with social media is very short-termist. So this kind of like, work hard when you're 20 and if you do nothing when you're 30. If you actually meet people that are in that kind of age class that have done well, they'll tell you that it's really boring. Like there's a period of time where, you've done well, like you've got money, you do what you want, all the rest of it. But then you'll find those people then want to help other people, or want to invest money, not just to make returns, but to help other people out, or they want to give charitably, or all these different things. So I think just be careful as to what you're chasing after and why. That's my kind of key message.
Yeah, defo. I really appreciate your sentiment about like do what you're passionate about and give yourself purpose and stuff like that. I think it's sort of a nice sort of note to wrap up on because I think we're sort of running short on time. Thanks so much for coming on. Like,
it's been really insightful.
Really insightful, yeah. Like, it's been great, man.
Given some great advice.
If my view, and it's very corny, so forgive me, but if one person has a positive thought or action or whatever from what I've said, that's why I believe that this platform that you provided me, I thank you very much for that. And other people, whether it's YouTube channels and anyone can create a YouTube channel or whatever. And don't be fixated by them reviews and this, that, and other. If one person's watching you, right, or two people or whatever, and that's having a positive impact on them or some impact, making them think, let's put it that way, surely that's a good thing. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks as always to Kyle for being my co-host.
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks to Charles for coming on and talking about business and entrepreneurship and stuff like that. It's been really insightful.
It's a pleasure. Sorry I didn't allow you to get many words in there.
No, it's what we want. Like it's just happy for you to just talk and let us know what you
were definitely passionate
talking about. Yeah.
That's one thing I think most people would never say that I'm not. Is passionate. And the only time, and this is the point, the only time that's been different is when I've lacked purpose and that why. So that's the key thing. Like anybody, and this is my last thing. Anybody can fall foul of mental health or fall into a bit of a trough or whatever the case may be, and it normally there's always a way through. That's the first thing, and it's normally because they've lost that why, that reason for being, for purpose. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. If you have any passions yourself that you want us to talk about, leave them in the comments below, and we'll love to talk about them.
Or hit us up in the DMs if you want to come on the show and show your passion on the passion show.
Yeah, if you want to come on the passion show, if you want to join us and talk about your passion, then just drop us a DM. Be more than happy to talk. But other than that, we'll see you next time. And once again, thanks to Charles.
Have a good day.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
Cheerio.
Bye.